Yeah.
It's George.
It's Elaine.
Come on up.
Hey, what are you listening to?
I never heard anything like this in my life. Listen to this.
This is exciting! Huh? Did I miss anything already?
Kramer, get in!
Where's the crazy man?
Hey! Sit down. Come on, it's about to start.
Hey everyone, welcome to Seincast. So we've got some good news and some bad news. Bad news is no Vinny this week. Even worse news, it's just me. However, good news, the best news, is that I got to speak with Seinfeld writer Tom Leopold the other day. Tom was behind some of the funniest episodes like The Cafe, which introduced Babu Bhatt, the suicide, and those, Drake's coffee cakes, the boyfriend, the second spitter theory, and one of my personal favorites, the Cheever Letters, and the panties your mother laid out for you. So, you want an overview. The first half of this interview is about Tom's childhood and his just incredible career as an actor and a writer, working with comedy legends like, check this out, Steve Allen, Jonathan Winters, Bob Hope, Chevy Chase. So the list goes on and on. The second half of the interview gets into Tom's experience writing on Seinfeld, Cheers as well, and kind of sitcoms in general. It's really interesting. Check out our show notes. We have links to Tom's website, his Twitter, his Facebook. He's got a lot going on. Find upcoming dates for his show, A Comedy Writer Finds God. Also purchase his album, Just the Hits. And get a chance to win a private comedy workshop with Tom, thanks to the website comedywire.com. Now, before we get started, two things. First, the interview was recorded over Skype to a landline, so the audio quality isn't the best. Regardless, once Tom gets going, you'll be comfortable. Second, Vinny and I swear from time to time on the show, and similar to the non-fat yogurt episode, we like to add bleeps, not only to achieve a clean rating, but censoring sometimes makes things funnier. Having said that, there's some swearing this week, without the bleeps. Yes, this is a Seincast first. This is nothing but raw, uncensored filth. But in all seriousness, it's just a few swear words here or there. They won't kill you. That's it for me. You can find Seincast on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram. Email us, seincast@gmail.com. Also, I didn't know this before we started Seincast, but a lot of time and money goes into podcasting, from like monthly hosting costs to purchasing new equipment, software upgrades, and really just all the time it takes to prep, record, and edit an episode. So, if you'd like to help out and support this show in any way, please check out the donate tab on our Tumblr page. And once again, huge thanks to Tom Leopold for joining us this week. We're joined today by Tom Leopold, one of the writers on Seinfeld. Tom, welcome to Seincast.
Hey, Matt, thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
Oh, well.
And by here, I mean on the phone.
Yes. Yes, if you can't tell already, we are not in the same room. Well, Tom, I wanted to hear a lot about how you got into the comedy scene in the 70s and 80s, whether it was acting or writing or, working with people like Chevy Chase, Ted Knight, Harry Shearer. But could we start at the beginning and just hear a little bit about, where you're from and what life was like for you growing up in the 50s and 60s?
Okay. Boy.
Take us all the way back.
Well, I was born. No, that's Dickens. Well, I was born in Miami Beach, believe it or not. And I grew up in Coral Gables, Florida, and Miami, South Miami and Coral Gables mostly. Went to Coral Gables High School. From the age of 7, I wanted to be in show business. For some reason, I would watch Art Carney and the Honeymooners, and it wouldn't leave my mind how funny he was. Like, I'd be at school, and just days after seeing an episode of that, how could something be so funny? I couldn't. And my father was very funny, extremely funny, and he knew what was funny. Like, he'd say, watch this, watch Carney, watch Bilko, watch this guy. And he just would scream and get sick. I mean, he'd just laugh and scream, really. And so he really was a good guide into all that. And I said, wow, who wouldn't want to be in show business? So from the age of really very young, I it was like, oh man, I want to get in that club. I can't imagine I ever will, but being from Miami in those days, there was no Entertainment Tonight. Show business was this, kingdom that, who gets to do that. And so, but I was always in kids theater and stuff like that. And I had a ventriloquist dummy, Jerry Mahoney, and I did all the typical stuff, unpopular kids do. They want to be in show business. And I had serious asthma in those days, so as a young kid. So it was a lot of time in bed, where I could just, watch I Love Lucy constantly, and which is pretty much the only education you need, really. If you can watch like 20 I Love Lucys, you really don't need to know. There's not much left you need to learn, really, because she was so brilliant. And I ended up actually working with Lucy too, which was not that long after I left school. That's amazing. My luck, with all that stuff. But and my heroes were, all those guys like. Well, Stan Laurel was my big hero. And when I was 11, my grandfather was kind of the mob lawyer from Cleveland Syndicate, and he was totally a legal guy, but he loved show business. And there were this vaudevillian team called Smith and Dale that would winter down at my grandparents' house on Miami Beach, and they were the models for the Sunshine Boys.
I wonder, as I'm, watching Seinfeld and all these sitcoms, if there's like a huge break, because I feel like a lot of people don't really, put on the honeymooners anymore or anything like that. And do you feel like they had a time and place, or do you think that the people you're talking about now should still be watched and should still be?
Oh yeah, I mean, forget about it. Those, you think these go, well, it's like Sinatra, and it's the same with the comics, like Gleason. They're pretty much all kind of around. I mean, nobody. Probably even your generation, certainly my kids' generation, don't know Bilko or, funny thing is, like, when I grew up, Sammy Davis Jr. and the Rat Pack, that was like, Mount Olympus, the gods. And like, my kids don't even know my kids might know Sammy because, I've told them stories about being at his house and stuff like that. But they didn't really know who Jerry Lewis was, and who was a huge influence on me and also many actors. Like, if you watch actors like Alan Arkin, you'll see very influenced by Jerry Lewis. And I spent time with him and wrote and worked with him a little bit. If I had thought that would happen when I was a kid, to me that would have been like, I'm going to be a NASA person and go to the moon or something. It was so far from, could possibly be reality for me. But anyway, I loved all those guys, and I also loved my generation's Letterman was Steve Allen. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe how fast he was comically, By the time I was in my 20s, I was working with him. It was, like, how did this all happen so quickly? I started out as an actor. I mean, is that enough childhood stuff?
Well, yeah, absolutely, because,
I want to hear how people threw rocks at me from school.
Yeah.
It's too painful. It's still too painful.
It is really, presumptuous.
That was my brother who did that. That's pretty sad.
Oh, I would have killed for a brother. I had 3 sisters. I would have killed for any brother to throw rocks at me.
I had 3 brothers, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
That's why we had 2 daughters, so.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to hear this at 80. Go out for a long one, Dad. I don't want to hear that.
Well, you were talking about your childhood, and before we were recording, you mentioned, I'm not like a household name or anything like that. But when you look at your career, you were amongst all of the household names, and that's just mind-boggling. I want to know what the hell you did to get to work with all these people so early on in your life. Was there, my friend who's in like a development team at a little studio in New York, he says like, any door that opens for someone closes as immediately when they walk through it. And another door will open for someone else. Like, a lot of people can't go through the same door. Was it just luck?
Right. That's a good way to put it. Well, I always say that I'm not near great. I'm just near the greats. Mm. I don't think there's anybody who's known more people that got famous than me. I started out as an actor. So when I came to New York, I was 17 years old, and I went to acting school at NYU. And the 2 first people I met are still very good friends of mine, Christopher Guest and Michael McKean. And they were 2 years older. They were 19, which is, when you're 17, that's a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
And I really didn't realize how funny I was until I till I met those guys and made them laugh, and I knew how funny they were, and so they were laughing. And that was the first time I hadn't realized that the stuff that had been brewing in me as a kid, class clown and all the other cliches. So I started as an actor, and as a matter of fact, they wanted to hold me back at acting school. If you can imagine that humiliation. Imagine telling my father they want to hold me back at acting school. And the joke of it is, by 18, I was already working. While I was in school, I was doing commercials, and I said to them, you can't hold me back because I'm appearing off Broadway next month, and I haven't really had a job outside of show business since. I got a job in this great play. It was kind of an important play, and it's just, you can't hold me back. These people don't think I stink, and they're going to pay me and everything. So being funny, we were always real funny, but at acting school, we were always, Chris and I and Mike were kind of put down because, if you're funny at acting school, I don't know if it's still the same, but, funny isn't as respected as crawling around on the floor crying with doing Uncle Vanya or something. And we always thought that kind of stuff was kind of funny,
Sure.
So we would do funny scenes, or we would, do stuff that we thought was funny, and everybody would go, oh, you guys don't take anything seriously.
Yeah, take it seriously, sure.
Oh, yeah, acting, And then I was an actor. So, but by the time I was 21, Chris knew this guy up at the National Lampoon magazine, which was a big, big deal at the time. I don't know how many of your listeners remember or know that, but
sure. And it's all of the people that you love and you respect over the years all mention National Lampoon at some time. You know what I mean? It's sort of like the launching pad for a lot of greats.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing because he also had a radio show called the National Lampoon Radio Hour. So one day Chris says, look, I know this guy up there, Henry Beard. Let's go up there and pitch an article to him. So we just started thinking about it on the subway up to the office, and we just kind of bullshitted our way into a story. And they said, oh, that's great. You got it. So from then we kind of started writing pieces for the magazine. We met O'Donoghue, and Michael O'Donoghue's kind of legendary in Saturday Night Live as well, and Henry Beard, and Chris, I can't remember their names, Sean Kenny, and all these guys who ended up doing Animal House. I mean, but this is 71 or something, or 72. Mm-hmm. More, 71, yeah. And so, but I would be in plays, I would be in the Arena Theater in Chicago, in Washington, or the Long Wharf Theater in New Haven, and Stockbridge Theater, and all this kind of stuff. Excuse me. And I'd be writing pieces and sending them into the magazine, or when I'd be back in the city, I'd be up at the Lampoon Radio Hour with Billy Murray and Belushi, and doing radio stuff with Chris and Gilda and Radner, and so I knew I was very funny, but I didn't know I could write, which is kind of, not always everybody who's funny can write it down, sort of, and be funny in the room, but also write it down. And I remember thinking as I was doing all these plays, what am I going to be at 60? Going to be Uncle Bill on the Waltons? I mean, I was always so much funnier, so much more talented backstage. I was okay, made a living, and I did Gunsmoke. I did all these guest starring things on TV by the time I was in my early 20s. Gunsmoke, Mannix. I was guest starring on Mannix, which is an old detective show.
Sure. Did you get shot or anything like that? Did you have a violent end?
If you can believe it, I was a gang leader.
Oh, wow.
You can actually find it on YouTube. It's called The Gang's All Here.
Oh, wow.
And on Gunsmoke, I had a guest starring part too. But on Mannix, I was leader of a street gang. I weighed about 120 pounds, and I don't know why I always got these parts, but so I was doing that kind of stuff, but sending pieces into the Lampoon. That kind of went on, and Chris and I did a pilot for an independent pilot called Flakes, which is also can be found on YouTube. So all this stuff can be found. And then slowly it just became more of the writing and less of the acting, which was great because I knew the acting thing was coming to a close when I started getting audition times of like 10:46 in the Valley. Your time is like 10:46 in the morning. But you're not even at the top of the hour or the bottom of an hour. You're not very important. Sorry,
oh,
man.
It's all good.
I sound like Lucille Ball at the end of her career.
Yeah, I was thinking, what was the last...
Mr. Mooney. I got a date with a boy, Bob Crane. Anyway.
Which one was that? Was that the Lucy show?
Oh, that was like before the last one.
Oh, gosh.
Where Lucy talks like, "Hello, Mr. Mooney."
Yes.
It's like 68.
But the hair was still red, of course.
And it was in color then, so it was like mercurochrome red. Mm-hmm. And I guess, and I was doing a lot of stuff before this, but I guess my big break was when Chevy Chase left Saturday Night Live, and he was the biggest star in the country, really. Mm-hmm. And, if you can remember, or people have to remember that, or imagine that, Chevy was the hugest star. He was the next Cary Grant, and he left Saturday Night Live after 1 year. And I had met him a couple of times at parties after Saturday Night Live, just because I knew a lot of the different people. And one day he came up to me at a party at Dan Aykroyd's loft after one of the shows, and he had known Chris Guest for years before that when they did the show called Lemmings. So he had kind of heard about me, just pretty much a nobody, but had a kind of a reputation with my friends. And he came over and sat next to me at this party, just sat there for a minute, and he looked over at me and he went, "I hear you're the funniest guy." And I said, "Yeah." And he thought that was hilarious, that I didn't try to be funny. I just agreed with him. Didn't say anything. Yeah. He thought that was hilarious for some reason. And so when he left Saturday Night Live, he calls me one night. He says, "Tom, Chevy Chase." And I said, "Hey, man." And he says, "Look, I've got a big special. I left Saturday Night Live. Part of my deal is to do this big special. And I want you to write on it, but I only want you to write on it if what I heard you told somebody is true, that you said this." I thought, I said, "Well, what was it?" And he says, "Well, I grew up. I've known Chris Guest's family for years, and his sister Alyssa still is a great friend of mine. And I was doing a play in Boston at the Charles Playhouse for 5 months, and Alyssa said, 'Hey, Tommy, can I come up and I want to come up and see your play?' I said, 'Great.' And I had an apartment there they gave me, and I said, 'Can I stay at your place?' I said, 'Sure.' He said, I'll stay 2 or 3 days. And I said, 'Stay 2. And, it was not the most brilliant thing in the world, but Chevy, I said, 'Yeah, I said that.' And he said, 'Okay, you're writing my show.'
Wow.
But, yeah, just
that was
from
it.
that was it. But as my career went on, and I ended up hiring a lot of writers, and I realized, boy, he was smart, because it really only would take me something like that to know who that guy is behind the joke, that it's not that it's a great joke, but it tells you who the guy is, kind of.
Oh, sure.
And how he sort of thinks just with that one thing. And that's sort of interesting. I remember I've read so many scripts when I was hiring people, and you go, bah, and then you read one line, doing bang, and you go, that guy. Mm-hmm. And you forget about structure or any of that stuff. It's just, who's the guy behind the shovel? It's like, I want to know that guy. Even now, I'll hear a joke on TV, if I'm just even passing through the room, and it's this great joke. I got to know who that guy is. It's just from one line. It's just interesting. It's like, I don't know. It's just a thing. But after you do it for a while, you realize it's that window into who that person is.
When something is really manufactured, and it seems like what you said to Chevy there was just very natural and something he never would have thought of himself. And that has to be something that...
Yeah, and I really respect him, and I still do. He's still a very close friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And I respected that. It didn't take much more for him to do that. Not because I was so great, but because he could tell, at least this guy's original or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, so... And from there, I was still acting and stuff, but then I was actually acting then at the same time, doing all these TV shows, but also appearing as Ted Knight's son.
Yeah.
6 episodes after he left the Mary Tyler Moore Show, after that show ended. He did this terrible show that I played his son on called The Ted Knight Show. And it was, talk about how dated this is, idea, and how horrible this idea was. He ran an escort service of women.
Oh, wow.
First of all, there are no such things, And I was his son. I was always chasing the girls that worked there and all that. But that's just an interesting side.
Well, it's funny because I've never seen that. It wasn't a spinoff of Mary Tyler Moore, right?
Oh no.
It was a completely different character.
And in fact, there's no record of it except that there's a promo for it, which I'm not in. But I'm so glad because I just stunk in it, and it's just horrible. Mm-hmm. But it was cool to do. But then the interesting thing, you asked about how I got to work with all these legends, and because of that, I was hired for a bunch of different kind of big shows. But I worked with my the first real legend that I idolized as a kid was Steve Allen. And this was the end of this kind of show, but he did a summer replacement show of like, I forget how many it was, 6 episodes, 8 episodes. And I was hired as a writer, right? And along with Catherine O'Hara. Me and Catherine O'Hara were hired as writers. That's when I first got to know Catherine, who everybody, now I know so many people in common with her, Gene Levy and Paul Schaefer's my very best friend, so I know a lot of those guys, Marty Short through him and all. But the first day of work at the Steve Allen show, I'm just hired as a writer, and we're shooting a thing I wrote at a location in a movie theater, and Steve was like 6'4", and I'm 5'10", and I'm standing next to him. I could barely speak. It's like, this is a hero of mine.
Sure.
And he's very tall, and I noticed on his neck he had one of those round Band-Aids, like to cover a pimple or cut himself shaving. And I'm just standing there, and he's standing there, and for some reason, I don't know where I got the balls to do this, but I just took my finger and reached up and held it touched his Band-Aid, just kept it there. I sort of pushed his Band-Aid and kept my hand there for a long time, and I just talked into his Band-Aid. Hey, Glenn, have Fritz bring my car around and tell Tony at the barbershop I'm going to need a manicure and, haircut and a shoe shine. I just kept doing that. He fell apart, Steve Allen. And he puts me on the show.
Wow.
As an actor, because I also wrote other pieces as me, as one of Steve's writers, and he put me on. So now I'm on the show, and Catherine O'Hara also is not only writing, but on the show. And I end up with Catherine doing musical numbers with me, Steve, Kay Ballard, who was this old comedian, and Donald O'Connor, who was another. I loved him more than Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly. And I'm singing and dancing with Donald O'Connor. I'm about, I'm pretty young. And this is, again, another amazing thing. And so that was kind of the luck I've had. I just kind of did that. And
well, you're in your 20s at this time, right? Or were you maybe just turned 30?
Yeah, I just turned 30 by that point. But I've done, I've been working from 18 continually through that,
And do you stop to think just for a moment, what did I do to get here? Or do you just keep moving forward and you just, enjoy the ride, as it were? Because
plenty of lean times, don't get me wrong. I had, my secret to my success was having a low overhead. I mean, when I was 20, I got this apartment in Greenwich Village in this great street. And my rent was $114 with a tub in the kitchen and all that. But it was in this great street on West 11th Street in the West Village. And so I could, I wasn't married, and I'd go out to Hollywood, and I'd be in Owen Marshall, Counselor at Law, some horrible TV show, guest starring Wayne Newton. Really, I played my teacher in an episode. And then come back, spend all the money, and go back out there. But I didn't need a lot of money to live. I mean, I didn't have a family. I could survive the lean times and so on. But all my real, a lot of it, it sounds now looking back, it was just kind of, it all makes sense. But at the time, for me, it was just stay in show business somehow. I mean, and now as I look back, since then, now I'm doing things. I mean, I don't think there's a part of show business that I haven't been part of in a way, or done every medium. And I have a radio show now, and I'm part of this comedy website called Comedy Wire, which I'd love to talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
But so it's really just like one step ahead. Okay, I got this job, I got that job, I did good on that one, and I stunk on that one, that's why it's very hard to tell people, well, how did you do it, and can you give me advice? Because it's such I came through everything in kind of a back-ass way, All I thought of at the time was just stay in it, just somehow keep in the business that I just loved it, And even as hard as it was, like I always say to people, like 98% of 94% of show business is a complete nightmare, but that other few percent is a gas, and that's what you kind of live for.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And when you get it, it's
tough. Yeah, it's really a hard life. And people don't really know. They kind of see, well, you did that. He must be, to live by your wits your entire career. I mean, it's only when I started doing sitcoms and I knew what I would be doing from one year to the next. That's the only time in my life, and I didn't start doing that till I was 40, you know.
Right. Well, before we start talking about your experience, writing on sitcoms, I just wanted to throw something out there. And I know this isn't like, something that everyone comes up and tells you, but I just want to say I am a huge fan of Mr. Mom. and I was so happy to find out you're in that
like
movie.
Being in that movie, yeah. Well, you know how that happened. I knew Michael Keaton as a stand-up, and slightly, but we were kind of friendly. And so he got this movie, and he told them to hire me to be in his carpool with Jeffrey Tambor and Christopher Lloyd, I think, right?
Jeffrey Tambor was your boss, and then you were kind of equals with Michael and Christopher. Yeah,
we did a funny scene where we're fired. I remember jumping on the desk and everything. But that's all because Michael, by that point I was really writing mostly. Mm-hmm. But, as a matter of fact, funny story about that is my kids were little. I'm in the other room, and suddenly they're watching TV, and suddenly I hear, Dad, come in here. And I ran in, and they're watching Mr. Mom. I had never told them I was in it. I'd sort of forgotten about it. And all of a sudden I'm on TV. I'm on their TV, and they're young enough to go, how did Dad get in there, in the TV? But, yeah, it's like I look back and I hear about things now, or people ask me about things now. For some reason, people are interested. I just think if you stay around long enough. And I look back and go, man, did I really do that? When you're doing it, it's like one thing I've noticed about all this stuff is it's the generation just ahead of you that you find magical. Like people are now looking sort of at my period of stuff and what I maybe have worked on, the way I would have looked on the writers of The Honeymooners or the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was really one of my major loves. And as a matter of fact, Bill Persky, who wrote 50 of them, has become my dearest friend. He's 83, and he's become like my dear older brother and mentor. He's still funny as hell. And now the fact that we've written some stuff together, so now I'm writing with Bill Persky, who wrote every great episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And I remember thinking, I'm putting him away on the floor. It's like, and I just was lucky to have a gift for it. My dad was really funny. And I just think I have a gift because I also think it's very musical. Like some people have a musical gift. I think comedy and music are very similar gifts. It's very much about rhythm. Some people can't hear the difference between a joke that goes da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, and they'll say it like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and kill 40% of the joke by putting too many words in it. It's just something some people can hear and some people can't. So I really, if anything, I just was able to stick it out. But I was lucky that I actually had a gift for something. I didn't really have a gift for acting too much. I was okay. I could kind of get along, but to have an actual gift for something and be able to kind of stick it out through the hard times is, I've been very lucky in that sense. I don't take any real credit except for just working on it hard.
Oh, absolutely. When you look back, it of course all makes sense, and it's it's all one linear path, and here were the steps along the way. But when you're in the middle of it, it's just a matter of keeping your head above water, I assume, and just keep moving. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Larry David once said, we were, before even Seinfeld, we were sharing a cab together once in New York, and he pointed out to me a corner. He said, "You see that corner?" I go, "Yeah." He said, "That's where I'm going to be homeless. I figured it out. That'll be the best place for me when I'm homeless." This is before Seinfeld, right? So you don't know where you're going, and you just think, first of all, you don't even know where you're going to live.
Yeah.
This long, but so, and it's probably better that way, It's like, I just went where there was a job, and somebody would hire me for something.
Yeah.
So, no master plan here.
Well, you sort of took a different direction when you started writing on sitcoms, right? Would you say that was like a phase in your life? I mean, it looks like it went on for 10, 15 years.
Thank God it did. Yeah, that was good. That was at the height of that whole thing. So that was talk about luck. But I had written some episodes of different shows. Like I wrote episodes of Dream On, a show called Dream On, which was pretty good on HBO, and I wrote some other things. I can't really recall now, but but before that, I made a living, decent too, rewriting people's movies that never got made, rewriting other people's rewrites of movies that never got made in the pipeline, but they never got made, and a big break. I've written some novels too, and one of my novels got sold to Bruce Willis, and I wrote the screenplay of that, and that his company, that didn't get made. So when I got the chance to write sitcoms, it really was great because, I didn't get into it to not get stuff made. It's nice to make the money, but, on a great sitcom, you're writing these lines that really great actors are going to say, and there's an audience, and there's sets, and, it's really like what you sort of got into it for, putting on a show. And to hear somebody like, on Cheers, to hear those guys say your joke and to know your joke is coming up, and if the joke is good, the actor isn't going to mess it up because these guys are machines. They're so great, right? So that's a real thrill, and that was apart from how lucky it was to hit the kind of a golden time for that stuff. It was great to be lucky enough to work on shows where great comedy actors were saying your stuff. It was a thrill, to hear, oh, wow, he hit that one dead center in the sweet spot, man. Listen to the laugh, That's a real high. And one of my big highs, to go back a bit, but talk about covering a span of people. When I was about 26, I got hired to write on the NBC Fall Preview Special, which was these shows they used to do to promote the upcoming fall sitcom TV shows. They'd have this big show to promote the other shows. It'd be a special, right? And before I ever wrote for Cheers, it was the first season of Cheers, and it was kind of not doing well. And so they hosted the NBC Fall Preview Special on the Cheers set to kind of promote Cheers. But so it was like a big party for all the new shows. Oh, look, hey, Night Rider, come over here and have a cocktail. He was an animal and all these horrible, and Super Train and all these things. And so it was NBC, so the boss came and said, Tom, we got Mr. Hope's going to come. Bob Hope's going to come and and sit at the bar and do some lines. And I want you to write him because I know you love all that old stuff and whatever. So that night I had to go home and I'm going to write a joke for Bob Hope. And if Bob likes it, he'll say it. You have to pitch it to him, right? So I'm thinking, my God, this is a great chance. So I thought, well, what is the quintessential Bob Hope joke? I try to think of it like, if there was a Bob Hope computer, what would be the ideal joke that would come out of it, right? So I thought of one. I ran it by the producer. He said, yeah, that's good. Run up to him. Give him the line, right? I go, okay.
Are you terrified?
I'm excited.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I said, Mr. Hope, I have the line. Yeah, what is it, kid? What is it? And I said, well, Shelley Long comes up to you and says, hi, Mr. Hope, you having fun at the party? And you say, yeah, this is great. I haven't had this much fun since I short-sheeted Dorothy Lamore's sarong. And he smiled. He went, yeah, that's cute. And we did it. He did it. They got a good laugh.
Oh, great.
But talk about walking on air for in those moments, you're like going, well, I could have been, if he liked that joke, I could have been writing for those, Monsieur Beaucaire, all these great movies that he did. It's, when you start touching these people that were mythic to you, even in some small way, that's the biggest high you can really have. For me, that was I can't believe it. And because of Steve Allen, I worked with so many of my other heroes. Jonathan Winters, I spent a whole day with. I had every one of his comedy records. My brother and I would lay in front of the hi-fi, and I knew every single word of every one of his albums. And he was the most beautiful guy. And Steve said, hang with Johnny and make sure he doesn't wander away. So Jonathan Winters and I go to lunch all by ourselves to Musso Frank's, the great old Hollywood restaurant. I'll tell you want to hear, I don't know if you have time.
Oh, let me tell you something real quick. No commercial here. No sponsor here, but we honestly, Tom, as much time as you can give us is much appreciated.
It's a beautiful story about Jonathan Winters, who's in my heart. My older brother was in the hospital. My older brother had cancer, and he lived so much. He just passed recently, but he lived so much longer than this. So it's a good story. But he was in the hospital down in Miami. And Johnny, Mr. Winters, was driving us back to the studio. He asked me about my family. He said, yeah, my brother Mark's in a hospital down in Miami. He's got Hodgkin's disease. So as soon as he parked it, he says, get your brother on the phone. Get your brother on the phone right now in the hospital. And they're calling for him. Johnny, come on. Wait, I got to talk to this kid, So I call my brother, and I said, someone wants to speak to you. And then Jonathan Winters Hey, Mark, Coach Bellison over at UCLA. You know, he just did 19 characters. He was on the phone with my brother for like 15 minutes, doing one character after another. And I kind of tear up a little just talking about it. It was the most divine thing. I mean, at lunch he was doing stuff that was so hilariously brilliant. I mean, he was mad, you know, he was mad in a beautiful way.
Sure.
But that he did that was like, that was just a gift, you know. That was God throwing me a big bone, you know.
Absolutely.
And my brother, too. Yeah.
You know, it's so funny. You mentioned Jonathan Winters, how, you know, this comedy legend. I actually first saw Jonathan Winters in a Twilight Zone episode.
With the pool player?
Yeah, with Jack Klugman and Game of Pool.
Rip off Hustler, right?
Yeah, of course. And I remember watching that. You know, I've been a Twilight Zone fan my whole life, like big time. And I was blown away. I'm like, God, this guy is like he's really intimidating. He's really a good, serious, dramatic actor. And then I remember finding out, oh, wait, he's a comedian. Like, I just had no idea the range this guy had.
Oh, man.
And
if people, your listeners, you know, want to really laugh their balls off, and they don't know who Jonathan Winters is, go to YouTube and watch Jonathan Winters with Dean Martin or on these roasts. I mean, Robin Williams I knew slightly, and he was great, but the real guy was Jonathan Winters, in my opinion, because he was just so funny and could do all these sound effects and all these characters, but no one ever could be like him. He was just this kind of Midwestern kind of. I mean, he did a kind of comedy that was, you know, Jewish comedians from the East couldn't do. Only Jonathan Winters could do this kind of right out of the corn silo comedy that was just beyond anybody. No one will ever be like him again.
Yeah.
And to be able to spend time with him, write for him, you know, shit, it's amazing.
Yeah, one of the highlights, right?
Oh, God, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you know, you mentioned touching these great people, you know, working with them, it's mythic, you know, you get like a high. Personally, I get a high talking to someone like you because, and I really mean that, because you are, you know, you've had this like incredible career and you've been a part of so many people's lives, whether they know it or not. Like, I know it's just an acting role, but the fact that you're in Mr. Mom, that means a lot to me. And I know,
I know you're not. I totally get that. I mean, I know how that feels. Yeah. You know, I tell you, just like that, you know, and I appreciate that so much. But when I was a kid, my very favorite show wasn't even a comedy show. It was Route 66. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people probably don't remember that show, but it's about these two cool guys in a Corvette that travel around the country, you know, meeting girls and having fist fights. And it meant a lot to me because I was so bedridden for a lot of it. And I was like, oh, man, to be able to be in that sports car and free and be younger, you know, be an adult and get chicks and all this kind of stuff. And this guy, Martin Milner, and George Maharis was sort of the breakout star, but I looked a little like, I was blonde and all this. I looked like Martin Milner, the other guy, you know, the kind of the wasp-eater guy. And I mean, that, for the way you feel about Mr. Mom, that's how I felt about Route 66. It has this magical quality to me, right? And you talk about touching people you have this mythic feeling about. Well, fast forward about 35 years, and I'm doing one of my pilots my own that I did a bunch of them that never got made. And they were pretty good, but I couldn't find the casting, which is so important. And anyway, they didn't go. But I had this one where it was a part for Martin Milner. And I said, God, can we get Marty Milner for this? I was doing it with Jimmy Burrows, you know, that did Cheers and all that kind of stuff. And he says, yeah. And so he's coming to read for you at 10. He's coming to read for me, right? For me. And I swear to God, I couldn't. I was so excited. I said, please, you're not even going to read, Mr. Milner. Would you do this, right? And he did it, and he was great. But I kept sitting next to him trying to, you know, and I realized I was becoming a little bit like a stalker, you know. Like, remember that episode, you know. And he kind of was, he was very nice, but there was no way he could know what I was feeling like. This was like a dream, you know. Mm-hmm. And those things were so important to me. They were all shot on location, and all the great actors were in them. You know, in those days, Martin Balsam and all those guys, Jack Warden, and
the whole cast of 12 Angry Men.
The entire cast of 12 Angry Men. Yeah, that's about all you need to say, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, all those guys. And I was just like a kid, you know. He's working for me, you know. And it's like, there is a moment, boy. More than even Bob Hope in a weird way.
Have you ever thought of putting together like a memoir or any sort of just collection of your your professional experience as a comic actor, comic writer?
Not really, but I wrote a book. I've written a couple of novels, and the third one I wrote with this guy, Bob Sand, very funny guy. And if you can find it on eBay or Amazon, but it's called Milton Marty, the story of the longest-lasting, least successful comedy writing team in show business history. It's about these two horrible comedy writers, this team, that couldn't even get blacklisted in the 50s because J. Edgar Hoover didn't think they were funny enough to blacklist them, And it's really my favorite book I ever wrote. It's not, and Bob and I play ourselves in the book. We're kind of young writers, and these two old absolute sleazebags, glom on to us. But I do a one-man show, actually, and actually I'm doing it all over the place. I'm doing it in Jersey 2 of the times next month. It's called The Comedy Writer Finds God. And it's about my conversion to Catholicism, but it's all about my show business career, too. It's very funny. It's a comedy writer finds God, so it's real funny. And in that, I talk a lot about my childhood or working with these different people and stuff. But, it's only recently that I thought, as I've been telling a lot of these stories, and I guess as I'm getting old, but I thought, well, I can't write anything like that because I don't really have any great stories or anything. I'm not a celebrity, so who's going to want to hear about it? And I don't really have a lot of stories where there are people banging each other or, I don't have any gossip, and my stories are just how they affected me, not necessarily, I don't think anybody would really be that interested in terms of the public, But it's flattering that you should ask that, but, I've had enough of me.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
All right, that's it for today.
Yeah.
Pulling the plug. Well, Tom, I was wondering if we could just, move on a little bit into your time writing on Seinfeld, and specifically the episodes you worked on. You wrote The Cafe in 91, The Suicide in 92, and you had a story by credit for the Cheever Letters. And,
Cheever Letters, and I also wrote a good part of the, I don't remember what it's called, but the spit theory, the Kennedy assassination.
The Boyfriend, really?
Is that The Boyfriend? I don't even remember.
With Keith Hernandez.
Yeah, Keith Hernandez. Yeah.
Oh, wild!
Because I was assassination-ophile, and Larry knew that, so I pitched in on that one. But I'll tell you the funny thing about the Cafe one with Babu Bhatt. I introduced Babu Bhatt, and also the IQ test was in that, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
George, where he gets Elaine to take his IQ test for him. Well, that was based on, I dated a girl when I was, before I had meaning in my life and met my wife. I was having so much fun till I had meaning.
I know.
But it's been great. But that apartment I told you about on West 11th Street, there was a little cafe that was always being rented by other restaurants and stuff. And there's this little cafe that opened on the corner of Waverly and West 4th Street. Mm-hmm. Of course, corner of 11th Street and West 4th Street in the Village. And all of a sudden there's a sign, kind of hand-painted, kind of schlocky sign, the Dream Cafe, right? And this Vietnamese guy in the menu opened it, a skinny little, kind of poignant Vietnamese guy. But the thing that was funny about it was really 4 tables, and the menu that he had was amazingly long. He had beignets, he had French food, he had Chinese food, he had American food, and nobody could even fit into this place. But the cute thing, or the sad thing really, was that at night he would put 2 of the tables in front of the place and put candles on them. Oh. And he always wore the same shirt, a mattress short sleeve shirt. But at night he would button the top button. That was his after 6 wear, Mm. And that was so amazingly sad, and I became totally obsessed with it. I kept saying to my wife, "Oh, look, now it's buttoned, And he put the candle, and she said, "Well, why don't you go in?" I said, "I can't go in because if I go in, nobody's ever in there." It was so sad. Matter of fact, it was so sad that I would walk around the block to my apartment to not see it. But I knew if I went in, I'd always have to go in, and the guy was so sad, and then I'd have to be part of his life and everything. But I never forgot it. And then finally it just ended. He just closed. But
sure.
I always thought, boy, that's... when I got onto Seinfeld, I thought that was perfect Seinfeld stuff. And then the IQ test was true too. I dated a girl who was in the old days gave IQ tests. Kept wanting to give me an IQ test. I thought, oh man, I don't want to find out I'm even dumber than I think I am. So I never
So was this sort of like her way of figuring out, like, is this like marriage material or?
No, her job was to give IQ tests stuff, and I didn't date her because of that. That wasn't what attracted me to her. But and she said, "Oh, I'm gonna give you one." I said, "No, I don't want one." But I always, because I was worried I'd be, just under the Elephant Man or something. Well, the Elephant Man was smart.
He was kind of smart. He was very eloquent.
Fun about his appearance. Yeah.
You would have preferred to look like the Elephant Man than her find out you had a...
Well, mentally I looked like the Elephant Man. But the brilliant thing about Larry David was, and I really learned a lot from him, was that he kept notebooks of little pieces of stuff, like little things he overheard. And this is something, I now give master classes in comedy writing, by the way. Mm-hmm. If you can reach me at tomleopold.net, or I'm on Facebook.
Sure.
But anyway, it's really interesting to do this now because I didn't realize there were so many people who wanted to learn comedy, and so people started asking me to do that. So I do it for this thing called Comedy Wire. But anyway, Larry would keep these different little things. So if we're looking for a B story or a C story, oh yeah, we can put that in there. That'll blend in nice with that. So, even if something's just a little pastiche of something, you can use it in something else. I mean, I really learned that from Larry, to keep a notebook and just remember these little things. And so that's how that happened. And the suicide was also the same. As a matter of fact, the same apartment where my wife and I came back from Christmas. We celebrated Christmas, and a couple of days later, it began to smell from the other apartment. We thought, oh man, a rat died in the wall or something. Long story short, this poor guy killed himself over Christmas. His wife left him, and and I had to identify the body. But very much like Dick Van Dyke, the cops came and used my apartment as a headquarters, and I was all excited because I love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought, wouldn't it be me? Because then his wife, talk about New York, it's a very New York thing. But as soon as they took him out, his wife took the apartment back because it was rent controlled.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And he died, but it's $120 a month, very New York thing. So I thought, well, wow, what if, he's in a coma and Jerry wants to date?
Mm-hmm.
The girl and his girlfriend. So that's kind of how that happened.
So, I mean, it seems like everyone, from what I've heard, whenever they talk about the ideas for an episode, it seems like 90% of the time they're inspired by real life. Have you found that true, like either working on Seinfeld or working on the other sitcoms?
Well, I don't find it true of every sitcom, and I think that's kind of why so many of them aren't funny or original. I mean, a lot of sitcoms, people are writing stories because they saw other stories on other sitcoms, But Larry was very good with that. But also, one of my other heroes, Carl Reiner, and I heard this from Billy Persky, who wrote all the Dick Van Dyke shows, said, he didn't want to know. He said, what happened to you this weekend? What did your kids do? What did your wife do? Did you have a fight with your wife? Because that's so universal, the real stuff. And I always say now, I'm sort of teaching people, whatever little I can teach them, is the place you want to get to in comedy writing is not to make anything up. I mean, to embellish it, to reorganize it, to put a what if that had happened to that real story, all that kind of stuff. But that's so important. And I think that's the key that's why you still laugh at the honeymooners, like he's jealous or he's full of himself and he goes overboard and he spends money he doesn't have. I mean, all these real human things. The real smart comedy writers play in that arena. I think it's true of any kind of writing, really, And, of course, with comedy, the more painful the real experience, the funnier it'll be.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on to the episode "The Boyfriend," which you inspired the assassination sort of storyline, which I would argue that's maybe what the episode is best known for. Was that something when you work on the show that you just sort of threw out there, or is it it's in the air and you can take whatever you want, or is there a way where it's like, here are my ideas for the week? Or
no, I remember I don't remember what the other story was, honestly. What was the other story in it?
You had Jerry meeting Keith Hernandez, and he befriends him.
Oh, yeah, he wants him to move, right?
Ultimately,
you don't have a friend until you get him to move, get you to move your stuff. That was great. That's typical Larry, right? And I said, well, what about, because he knew how fascinated I was with the assassination and all that. It's kind of my hobby. And I collect Kennedy stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I don't remember how it joined up with that, but I'm sure it was Larry's idea to join it up, and then we kind of worked on the Magic Spitball or Magic Spit or something, and that became an hour show, right?
It did. It was the first hour show.
Parts.
Mm-hmm.
2 parts, yeah. One of my most fun things to do.
Yeah. Oh,
anyway.
It was actually
Larry's really. It was his thing, but that added a lot to it, I think.
Mm-hmm. We were actually my co-host Vinny, who's not here today. We kind of break down each individual episode, and we talk about the story. We talk about any behind-the-scenes trivia we can get our hands on. We were just looking back on the episodes and ranking them, and The Boyfriend still to this day is my favorite episode.
Oh, wow, that's great.
It's just I don't know. It's from
usually people say Babu Bot and all that, but that of course was one of my favorites because it was kind of my hobby.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic episode, and I think it's really. I always, you can always tell the really great Seinfeld episodes when you see those clip shows, and no matter what, the second spitter is in there, the Babu Bot scene is in there, like all these just wonderful moments.
Yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm really proud to have been a small part of that show.
Absolutely.
Really.
And one other thing with the Cheever Letters, which I know you have a story by credit. This was this aired.
Oh God, I can tell you how that came about.
Oh, that would be great actually, because this aired the year you weren't on the show at the time, I think, but it was a story by credit.
No, that's right. It was my story, but they didn't do it till later. I think. I don't think I was there when they did it. Right?
Yeah, it was season 4, and I think you'd gone to Cheers at that point.
Oh yeah, I've been on Cheers at that point. Well, that came about because I told Larry this story that I was dating a girl, and we were, being tender with each other. I got to be careful. My wife's in the other room. But anyway, this is long before I met my BM, my beautiful mate. Mm-hmm. And we're, making love, and she was wild, and she kept kind of saying wild things, right? And I thought, wow, this is cool. She's saying all these wild, sexy things. So I tried to keep up with her, Oh, I said something back, and she got even wilder what she said, and I said something, I'm kind of like, well, I don't know what to say. I was kind of, trying to keep up with her. And then finally I said, yeah, and your your underpants, your underwear that your mother laid out for you, And all of a sudden she comes out of this deep, passionate craziness and goes, what did you say? And I said, I didn't even know what I said. I just sing anything, And Larry thought that was the funniest damn thing, and it was.
Yeah.
And so we used that in there, and I think that kind of made the episode, really, for me, because it was just so incredibly insane, I didn't know it was such a typical nebbishy thing on my part to try to just keep up with this wild woman, And then she snaps out of it in this frightening way. What did you say? That was it, man. I was done. I mean, that was,
I've never been in that specific situation, but I
never was before or after.
Sure, yeah.
I sure got a lot of residuals out of it.
Oh, I bet.
I don't know what I was saying, but then talk about what a lame, benign thing it was, too, what I said.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
It made no sense at all. And she folded them for you? I mean, what am I talking about?
Well, thank you for sharing something, putting something so personal out there, because, again, one of my absolute favorite episodes is the Cheever Letters, and it's mainly because of that storyline, and of course leading up to that final delivery by Elaine as she, basically reveals to Jerry like she knows what he said to the girl, and that's honestly one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you so badly is because you are responsible for just putting these incredible episodes on TV. Like
wow.
If it weren't for you, they never would be as good as they are.
Oh wow! Well, the thing is about all good writing and it's the smartest thing to do, and yet it's the hardest thing is, if you put your most embarrassing thing into something, no one's going to believe it's you. Mm. And those are the things people remember. The more specific and personal you are, the more universal it is. I mean, nobody has to do that, what I did. But everybody's got, like you just said, it resonates with something of your own life, and that's what it's all about, right? That's why these comedy shows, the ones we love are so important to us because they just, I could be that could be me. We're not all so special that we're going to be so different that we won't be able to identify with really great stuff.
Right. So it's, the early 90s and you get your, first writing gig on Seinfeld. Were you a part of the writing team? Did you meet Larry or Jerry? How did you get brought into the fold?
Oh, well, I knew Larry before that, way before that. And we actually worked on a show together, kind of like a politically correct show. Remember, like those news shows? Mm-hmm. There was a show called Politically Correct, and I met Larry there, and we knew a lot of people in common. And Larry Charles I'd worked with on the Richard Belzer shows on Cinemax, where I played Richard's manager, and I was the head writer on it. So we had friends in common. I knew Larry, and then he disappeared for a while, and he was out doing this thing called the Seinfeld Chronicles, and there were 6 of them. I thought, and I called him. I said, "Man, that's funnier than shit. I can't believe they're letting you do that." And he goes, "Yeah, I know. It's just 6, but you know." And then because of that, I said, "Wow, I love it." And then I said, "You know, if you ever need another writer, if it goes, you know, let me know." Because I thought, well, and my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, and Larry says, "Yeah, come on out," because they believe it or not, they gave us 9 episodes to do. They probably won't pick up the back 13 or anything, but oh, great, my wife's pregnant, we'll go out there, and it's so damn funny. And one of the things was when nobody's watching you, you can just do what you really think is funny, because you figure you might as well fail, at least feel good about it, like you really actually made yourself laugh, right? And that's how I got into it, and I came out and we started doing it. And then the interesting thing was I never. You know, you're in these rooms and you're in the studio night and day, so you don't really realize what's going on out beyond that. When the shows began to air, after a few had aired, I remember being invited to some party, and what's her name from Married with Children?
You're killing me here.
She's great. She's the daughter of a great composer, movie composer. Anyway, Katie Segal. Boris Segal was her father, believe it or not. Anyway. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, I'm at this party with my wife. Oh, wow, I loved Married with Children. I thought it was hilarious. Somebody tells Katie Segal that one of the writers from Seinfeld is there. The show we've only been on like 3 times. And she comes over to me. She says, "You write on Seinfeld?" It was as if I was, you know, a movie star.
Right.
And it was the first experience I'd ever, you know, I'd written on a lot of these big things, but I never had an experience like that. Like all of a sudden and then I realized, oh, wow, something's really going on here, you know. And then they moved us. And then it became this huge thing. We do an episode of The Suicide with the Drake's Cakes, and then the next day, cartons and cartons of Drake's Cakes would appear. Or we did the Pez thing. You know, all of a sudden, you know, a crate of Pez's would come. So then we started thinking like, wow, let's put stuff in we want. You know?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, get some more stuff. You know.
And I'm sure none of these companies are complaining. You know, you're using our brand or our name. They're like, hey, go for it.
Oh man, yeah.
Well, you know, it's just wild. You know, you mentioned earlier what what Larry was saying about, you know, I doubt they're going to pick up the full 13. We might as well. I don't know if he said this, but we might as well do what makes us laugh, what makes us happy.
That's the hardest thing to do when you're in success too. You have to remember to hang on to that when everybody's pulling you every different which way and people are expecting this and that. I mean, that's a real mark of that's where Larry was so brilliant and courageous, really, you know, because to keep that as if nobody's watching thing while you're doing the rest of them is a ballsy thing to have to do. To keep it. That's why you got to do what you have to do. What you really think is funny, because God willing, it'll go on for 10 years and you'll know how to do it. But if you start writing because this is something they may like, then you're dead. You won't know how to repeat it.
Do you think most sitcoms sort of suffer from that? Because I would imagine if you ever had the opportunity to do a pilot, a series on a major network, your hands are tied from day one.
Well, the only time they get untied is when you're a hit. And that's the reason they kept Seinfeld on was it came through Jerry's variety thing. He got a deal through his being a stand-up. So it came through a different part of NBC. It didn't come through the sitcom thing. It came through this guy, Rick Ludwin. It was all because of this guy in the variety thing. He was a really great guy, Rick Ludwin, who brought Jerry in. And so they kind of gave Jerry a deal. Nobody was really looking. Who cares? You know, and Jerry was a big stand-up by that, before that, too, you know. So, but I mean, no, so they kept it on because it came in such a weird place. I doubt that they would have kept it on now.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, too, and I'm finding this out as I'm kind of, quote unquote researching, they're really the only research I can do is what I can, find online or find like on the DVDs and whatnot, is that it's not like it was a huge hit, like right out the gate. You know what I mean? Like,
no, quite the opposite. We're like 40 or something, I think.
Right. It's almost like it's I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that when you have like a huge office building and you're in like this one wing or department and it's like, the boss never comes over here. No one's ever going to bother us. Let's just see if we can keep, getting our paychecks each week.
Right. That's kind of how it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And shows that blow up immediately, I think rarely stay good for a long period of time. I feel like there needs to be those couple of seasons for it to grow and to mature and for it to kind of find its way.
But Cheers is another example of they almost took that off. And it was only because of, his name has just jumped out of my mind, that lovely guy who died, or young, not Grant Tinker, the guy who took over, I can't remember his name. He was a great, smart guy before Warren Littlefield. Anyway, he kept it on because he liked it.
Mm-hmm.
He had the power then, to do that. I mean, Cheers would have been off after the first season.
Oh, I hate saying this, Tom, because I know you, like, Cheers was your bread and butter, when you wrote on it. But, like, I've watched the first 2 seasons, and I'm a little lukewarm on it, but I'm still sticking with it because I know, what a classic show this is. But, just judging it on that first season, you can tell it hasn't quite gotten its footing yet.
Well, I know, and things evolve. I mean, the interesting thing about that is, like, having had this experience, you'll hire an actor or an actress, and you hire them and they do the part as written. But then you might write a scene where they the only reason Cheers stayed on with when Shelley Long left because Kirstie Alley came on, and it was going okay. But then, as Jimmy Burrows tells the story, they wrote a scene where she has to cry, and she cried so damn funny that they began to write more of that kind of stuff. So you write these characters, and then the people do them, but then the actors bring stuff that you begin to then write for, and that takes time. It's you have to have a little time there. But the great thing, the show that treated the writers better than anything was Cheers, and the actors gave us so much respect. And there wasn't an interview they did; they didn't thank the writers, and that was the best room I was ever in. I mean, the funniest fucking guys. I'd come home from working on Cheers and just can't sleep. I was like bouncing off the walls. So it was just, as hard as it was and as late as the hours were, we were just laughing our asses off all the time. And I thought, well, this will be what it's like. Every room will be like this. And it wasn't. There's always funny people in the room, but this was like the Rolls-Royce company, of sitcoms, and it was a high point.
So, Tom, how did the setup for the writers at Seinfeld differ from something like Cheers, which was, like a more established, bigger sitcom?
That was an ongoing thing by the time I got on there. It was like, as I said, the Rolls-Royce. I mean, it's a smooth, beautiful machine, But with Seinfeld, which was really the first full sitcom I did, it wasn't like that at all. Because Larry had no experience with that kind of a writing thing. And it all had to come through Larry's point of view, really. So Larry would, we'd pitch ideas. Larry would go try to work them out. He'd bring us in on segments of it. But there was no room, per se. A room meaning 10 writers all yelling. And so many times it's just too many people. But that's another story. But no, it was very atypical, of the other more classic experiences of writing. There was no other thing like that. And yet, it was interesting, but it wasn't at all like other sitcoms. And mostly because it was so new to Larry, And so there were all these different rooms. You'd have your own office, and you'd be working on concepts. You'd bring him into Larry, what about this? And he'd say, it's going to work that up. Or he would just take it right then. And then he would, everything would go through his typewriter, too, because it all had to be, he was the vision of that thing. But it was fairly kind of, there was no kind of central room at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went to Cheers, I thought, well, that's really where I felt I really got great training. Really. That's where I really learned how to do. I thought I learned a lot from Larry, but I really learned how to do the craft of it at places like Cheers. And it really felt like I really felt like I was taught a trade. Really nice feeling, a really nice feeling. Makes you very secure.
When I think of like a writer's room, quote unquote, you kind of hinted at it. I think of like a big table with just like a ton of writers throwing as many ideas out there as possible and seeing what sticks. And I'm sure there's good and bad in that.
It's great and it's also bad. If you're in one of those rooms and the showrunner, the boss, isn't funny, then you're stuck in there for 10 months trying to get jokes past a joke goalie.
Mm-hmm.
That's too good. But it's funny because I was brought over to London. I worked in London a bunch over the last few years, and I was brought over to do an American-style room for an English show called My Family, which had already been established, but it was the only show in England that had a room, really, and I had to put together this room. But one thing I did learn from that is too many people, man. It slows you down to have so many people. Yeah, you have people out writing scripts and bringing them back in, and you turn them around and rewrite, all that kind of stuff, but it's such a better operation and a fast-moving kind of on-the-ground operation to have fewer people in the room.
Right. And just hearing you talk, it's like, well, what is the best method? Is it the one you had on Seinfeld, or is it, the one you'd have on any other sitcom with a big writer's room? And it doesn't sound like one is better than the other. It's just whatever works.
Seinfeld, obviously, that was great for that.
Mm-hmm.
They all find their own way of working. And, the interesting thing about running a show, which I have done, is you cast the writers as much as you cast the actors.
Sure.
You got to cast the room. You want a guy who can do that because you can't do that. You want a guy who thinks like that. A guy from the Midwest. The whole idea is to get you to your car earlier, in the night. Who'll come up with that joke will get you out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want a variety, but you also, when you have a room, this is what I was thinking. You have a room with 12 people in it. A great bunch of your time is spent trying to not hurt anybody's feelings when you don't take their joke, and
mm-hmm.
It becomes like a forum of kind of thing where it becomes like, because you're there from 10 in the morning and off until 1, 2 at night.
Wow.
And at 1 in the morning, the word duty becomes the funniest thing you've ever heard. You're just so fried. So it's a whole psychological thing. It's there aren't a lot of jobs where you work those hours. Yeah, you're making a lot of money, like you're on your calculator going, wow, look at all the money I made today. But you're still sitting there and not seeing your family until 2 in the morning and schlepping back there at 10 in the morning.
Sure, there's sacrifice there. Absolutely.
Well, I thank God for it. I don't, it was wonderful, but it's not something I want to do now.
Right. You well, when you started on Seinfeld, you then worked on Cheers, and I was just checking out your credits. You wrote on Caroline in the City, and you did a lot of producing work.
Well, they called you, starting out, they used to just have a thing that said writers, like on the old shows, and then a crawl with different names on it. But because of the Writers Guild and all, they started giving people titles instead of money. So you could be associate producer, but
right.
You're just a writer too.
It's good for your career. It's for the next job, when you.
Yeah, then you move up from story editor. I think I was a story editor on Seinfeld, which I used to make Larry and Jerry laugh. I think, can I come in and edit some of your stories in there? Basically we're just writers.
Right.
And it's just a name. Until you're executive producer, then you really are running the show, and that really is the boss.
Mm-hmm. Right. I was watching your Cheers episodes this morning.
Which one?
I was watching The Beer's Always Greener, and I was watching Norm's Big Audit, and
right. Those are my favorite titles. Norm's Big Audit. What an exciting, sexy title.
Well, that episode was very sexy. Norm potentially having an affair, but.
On Cheers and all these other shows, you'll say you'll be your name on it because you sort of originated it. But everybody pitches jokes in every other episode. In other words, there's jokes of mine in every episode. People's jokes in my episodes, So you do originate these scripts that you write, but everybody, and you want people to pitch in better jokes too. It's all about the show,
Mm-hmm.
But at least you know you're guaranteed a full residual on one that have your names on them.
Of course, right.
Yeah, and in my case, a lot of the things that I did write stayed pretty much more than I think a lot originally what I wrote to some degree,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Or they were improved by the guys in the room. You want the guys I work with on Cheers to best you for sure.
Right.
When you got like Tom Anderson and Dan Staley and Rob Long and Dan O'Shannon in the room, please. Make me be better for sure.
Well, Tom, I'm just looking over my notes here, and I know we're in terms of your work, we're only like in the early '90s, but I figure just so we don't take all morning here, we can kind of maybe fast forward to the present day, and we could kind of just catch up what you've been up to lately. Anything you wanted to promote? You of course have that the show that you mentioned was actually in New Jersey coming up. Is that right?
Well, I do this one-man show called A Comedy Writer Finds God. And you can find out where to contact me on that. It's really a funny show, but it's about my conversion to my finding faith through my daughter being ill at one point. Thank God she's better now. But I'm a comedy writer, so it's huge laughs in it, but it's also kind of poignant. It's called The Comedy Writer Finds God, and I do it around the country. But I'm very proud to have been Jewish. I mean, you can't be a comedy writer and not be thrilled to be. And I still consider myself 100% Jewish, with an asterisk, like Roger Maris. You know, I'm a Catholic too. So I'm both. You know, and I've been very blessed. It's my show is kind of interesting in that it's these absolutely, you wouldn't believe, little miracles happened to me that made it absolutely impossible for me not to believe, because it was just almost too much, you know. And it's really remarkable and lucky that these things should happen to me, because I'm too thick-headed to have made an intellectual decision. Not very Jewish, but not religious, or no spiritual life really, but just very proud to be Jewish, and you know, I'm proud to be among the funniest group of people that ever lived. But I also have a radio show of my own starting at the beginning of October. I've been on for 2 years with a priest on the Catholic channel, a comedy writer and a priest, which has been hilarious. It worked out great. And the guy who hired me, the priest who brought me into the faith, really, he says, I want you to be on. He became the head of Sirius Radio, Catholic Radio, and he says, look, I want you to be on this show with a priest. I said, Father, I've been Catholic for 2 hours here. I don't know anything, you know. And he said, yeah, that's what I want, you know. So that turned out really well, and I'm going to have my own show called Laughing in Church, starting on the channel 129, the Catholic channel, first week of October, and that'll be fun. Where I'm going to interview comedians about faith or their lack of faith. I'm also going to punch up priests' homilies on Thursday. I punch them up and tell them how it could be funnier, so when they do it on Sunday, they get the laughs they deserve.
Oh, wow.
That's going to be really funny. We've done some test shows, and that turns out great. And I'm going to have my friends on and all that. And I'm also part of this wonderful comedy site that I'm sure your listeners will be into, called Comedy Wire. One word, comedywire.com. It's like Facebook for comedy people, where you write jokes to certain current events, and the people who get liked for the best jokes move up and win private sessions with me or other people, and win prizes. And we have 1.5 million visitors now, and I've become kind of a small little piece of it, and I'm real proud of it. It's great. It's created by this guy, Preston Gitlin, and brought me into that. And I'm doing this really brilliant guy, young guy, who won an award from the Huffington Post to do his own 5-minute sitcoms. We're doing about 6 of them. I'm writing them with him. So it's a 5-minute show where the same characters all the way through. His name is Paul Gale, and you really want to see a really clever guy. He does really funny stuff look at YouTube, Paul Gale, Gale, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ellie. And so I'm helping him with that. I'm working on a sitcom with the biggest star in Vegas. I just went out to Vegas to write a sitcom for this guy named Terry Fader, who won America's Got Talent. He's the most amazing ventriloquist you've ever seen. So I'm going to write kind of a Gary Shandling type backstage and onstage show for him, or at least that's what I'm in the process of doing. Who knows if it'll work out. But so I play music too. I write my own songs. I wrote an album called Just the Hits. I figured if I'm paying for it, I can call it whatever I want.
Well, I actually just bought that album this morning. And,
oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I was listening to it. You know, I was just getting ready, for our interview, and I stopped what I was doing. It's beautiful, actually. I mean...
Well, the tunes are good.
Yeah, like even the comedic, like funny lyrics, I still stop just to listen to the singing.
That makes me feel great. That really makes, I didn't know I could write songs, and then I did.
Yeah.
I used to write lyrics. And Harry Shearer, who's a great, I'm sure you know who he is. He and I wrote a musical called J. Edgar, about J. Edgar Hoover and his love affair with Clyde Tolson. And we did it at the Aspen Comedy Festival, and Kelsey Grammer starred in it for us, and John Goodman and Chris Guest was in it, Michael McKean, the guy who plays Homer, Dan Castellaneta, whatever his name is, and Hank Azaria, and all these guys. We did it. First, we did it at a theater. We did it for NPR, and then we were the centerpiece at the Aspen Comedy Festival. So we wrote the words, and this wonderful guy who's passed away now, Peter Matz, wrote the music. And so I've always been, words have always come, so I thought, well, then I realized, it's all about the melody. You can have the cleverest words in the world, and they come easily to me. But if the tune isn't great, it's not a song, So I was totally surprised to think that I was lucky enough to be able to write some melodies that sort of a little bit hooky. So comedy, it's called Just the Hits, folks, at a computer near you. So now here I am. I started with this career. Now all of a sudden, as I said before, now I'm kind of this website. I'm doing video sitcoms with this young guy. I don't know how I became stayed semi-relevant, I suppose. But yeah, I'm just so lucky and excited by all these. Now I'm on radio. I mean, there isn't really much, except for the carnivals. I haven't been in that part of show business. But I am a geek, so I'm looking forward to that. If you just do stuff you love, you're going to have one of those lives. I never forget. I actually worked with George Burns once, too. God. Anyway, but he once said, I'd rather be a failure in a business I love than a success in a business I hate.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up okay if you just keep trying to follow that. I have a very overworked guardian angel. That's for sure. My friend David Steinberg, the comedian, was once introducing Steve Allen on a roast, and he said, "Steve Allen, he's amazing. He's written 20 Broadway shows, 50 television series, published 16 books, wrote 1,000 songs, and you wonder, how does he do it? And the answer is simple: complete disregard for quality." And I guess that's sort of the secret to my success, too.
Well, I think a lot of people would disagree with you on that one.
Why don't you come and let me buy you a lunch at the Friars Club sometime?
Oh, yeah. That would be great.
Yeah, I'm serious. Next time you're in the city. Yeah.
That's very nice of you.
I love doing an interview. It's great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Tom, thank you so much for joining us here. It really means a lot to me not only as a Seinfeld fan, but as just a comedy fan in general. And hearing all your stories, it means a lot. And all of our listeners appreciate it too. So thanks again.
Well, I'm flattered to be asked and really enjoyed it. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for calling.
We've had our moments, you and I. Moments that warmed our hearts and lit the sky. Though we never won an Oscar, no one knows our name. We'll never get a start upon the Walk of Fame. We've had our moments. We've had our moments in the sun. We've done what others said could not be done. Though we never got a dinner, no one raised a glass to our brilliant future, our golden past. We've had our moments, hand in hand, two lovers in an ever-loveless land, paying down the mortgage, picking up the kids, trying to do as good as our parents did, is giving us moments. We've had our moments all alone. We turn the music up, we turn off the phone. After all these years, girl, you're still looking fine. The way you touch my body, the way you touch my mind, it's giving me moments. Hand in hand, two dreamers in an ever dreamless land. Going out to dinner, picking up the tab. Moments I'm glad I had.